Is this thing on? Hello and welcome back to the Voice Podcast, a podcast by students for students. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of continuing your education even when you're not taking a traditional path. And to help me with this conversation is Gail MacAllister, who I think really exemplifies this. Gail, how are you doing?
Good. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's a really great opportunity to have you on here and just talking about your path with your career and just some things that we can share with fellow students. So first off, why do you think continuing education is important in today's society?
Well, I think one of the things that I have found is as we talked about in the past, I came to post-secondary education kind of late in life as opposed to the traditional trajectory. And because it was later, it was also it was the right time for me. And it just sparked that fire in me to just, education for me isn't really what I know, it's all the things I don't know. Okay. And I think that that's kind of what gets me up in the morning is the more I learn, the more I realize how much more there is out there. So
yeah, it's that chance to expand your horizons. I know what you mean though. It's for every fact you learn, there's two more things you don't know. And it really becomes a fun little rabbit hole to fall down into. So you said you started your path a little bit later. When did you start your post-secondary career?
I was actually around 35 years old. Okay. When I left school, got married shortly after, married my high school sweetheart. Aww. And we really focused the first part of our marriage on his career. And it was fine. We enjoyed it. I worked in banking. So I considered those jobs, right? Because my first husband got posted around various places. And so I always had a job, but I didn't really have that career. So when we posted to Northern Ontario, while we were there, I said, okay, so when we get settled, he wasn't going to be posted as often. So I said, I think then I'd like to think about school. Okay. And so he was like, no problem. We've flipped the tables here. Happy for you to do that. So St. Lawrence College was actually my first foray into working my nerve up to go back to school. And what an amazing spot. I mean, I was going to school in the evening. I was working all day at Queen's, going to school in the evening. And it really just set me on that journey. Barry Keefe was my first instructor, and it wasn't even it was in a professional type program that they had. And then I started taking the human resources program because I was already a manager at Queen's. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's why am I trying to figure this stuff out? There's this whole world of education out there that can just tell me stuff. And that really just started me. And then I was super fortunate to be employed by Queen's because one of the perks of being employed is oftentimes your employer has professional development programs. One of the professional development programs at Queen's is you can actually take a degree program and you get the equivalent of a first year undergraduate degree tuition in your bank every year that you can apply towards taking courses at Queen's. Wow. So I was paying for my courses at St. Lawrence, and then I realized that if I went to Queen's, I didn't have to pay for them. So it really started after I took labor relations at St. Lawrence as part of the HR program. From there, I started taking organizational behavior at the university level, and then I thought, oh my goodness, I can do this. And I think based on what I learned and that really wonderful start at SLC, then I moved on to Queen's and then just dabbled, quite frankly. And then thought, okay, had to build my confidence because Queen's is an excellent school, has an excellent reputation. And I was actually on the cusp when I started my education that I was like the age of most of these students' moms. So I really had to think carefully about, can I do this? Yeah. And so it was, you know what? I found out I can. I think because I was motivated, right? And I had that joy of learning. And because I was motivated, I could compete with the other students in my class and do well. And I had to learn a few important lessons is group work. The younger students would always say, "Oh, you must know," and I must lead. And so after a while, I thought, guys, every day I get this wonderful opportunity through my full-time employment to lead. I'm going to turn it over to you. And so I had, but all of that was like, oh, somebody wants me to, I had to learn how to pull back as well. Like, I think there's a program called Curb Your Enthusiasm. I think I was the poster child for that title. So.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I as people know, I'm a little bit of an older student myself, and I felt similar kind of way coming back. It's something that I'd wanted to do for a long time, but it's kind of hard to push yourself to do that when you've been away out of the education system for so long. And I like you, I can't help but think that St. Lawrence has been just a great way to start back in the education system, because the professors here they're fantastic, and the level of learning they provide is just it's excellent. And they have so many different reciprocity agreements with universities around the globe or universities in Canada, where the programs we're taking is accredited. And it's really nice to know, especially like conversations that you and I have had, being able to discover some of these potential paths going forward. St. Lawrence can obviously be an endpoint for some people, but I'm hoping for myself it's going to be like with you. It's one of those beginnings of a path, and it branches out in a lot of different ways, so long as you want to be. And if you don't, that's fine. You can find jobs, you can find employment, but it's really, really exhilarating knowing that there are a lot of these different ways you can kind of grow out of this little basin. I love it so much.
Yes. Well, one of the things that I was fascinated with was watching, for me, when I first started at SLC in 2014, I was teaching in the college program, the HR program.
Okay.
And then I taught in some of in the accounting program, teaching the organizational behavior course. Yep. And then I was invited to teach in the BBA program.
Okay.
And what was really great was watching, by that point, some of the students that I had taught in their college program were now moving into the articulation through their BBA. And so it's really fun. I think this term I'm teaching a course in emergent topics in public administration. And in that course, I think there's only 2 students that I have not already taught,
really?
either on the college level or, and so that's really cool to see how these students have grown and developed. And the BBA program the other thing is I was really pleased to learn is how competitive the BBA program is for graduate school. And I was quite surprised because I guess I thought of an applied degree differently. It's not. And the BBA program actually, a student that I had taught all the way through her BBA, I think I had her in 4 different classes over her undergrad, came to me and said, "Would you mind being a referee for me for graduate school?" And I'm like, "Oh,
fantastic."
Sure. And so I was one of her academic references, and it was a pleasure to do so. She was a great student. And what ended up happening is the program she applied for, the June before she started, I actually got a job there as the manager.
Oh, wow.
So then I ended up teaching her in her core program.
That's fantastic.
And so I watched her grow into that. So it was so amazing for me, growing from her BBA program into a master's program and a highly competitive program.
Yep.
And then she's now moved on to a law degree at Carleton or Ottawa or one of those. And so to see her fulfill her dreams in education, because from the first day I met her, she said, "I want to be a lawyer."
Oh, wow, interesting.
Yeah, and she was just and she took this path that was going to get her there. And so I'm so proud to see how our students excel and use education, but also use their education for careers that also will help them advance by providing professional development opportunities to go back to school. So again, as you can tell, I'm a bit of an education junkie. I don't know. My students know this. I actually started out with a bachelor's degree in religious studies, which it's like a degree that is like, why would you take religious studies? 'Cause I'm not religious, by the way. I don't particularly affiliate with any religion, but how I did that was when I started taking Queen's courses, because I wasn't eligible to get into Queen's, because I'd never intended to go, you had to start as what they used to call a mature student thing, where you had to pass a course, pass another course, and then if you did that, you were allowed to go part-time. So when I took religious studies, I got a very good mark. I received a letter from the head of department that said, congratulations. I do hope that you would consider thinking of this as a degree choice. And I thought, oh, they want me. So they got me.
Perfect.
And you know, people say, well, what can you do with that? Well, when you think of a degree in religious studies or any degree in the arts, one of the things you have to consider is, how do you transfer your skills? And I think that you and I have had chats about that as well, like what brought you into accounting and what you want to do with it and how you see transferring those skills. And I think this is the one thing that, as a message that if I can get out to students and to your audience, is everything you learn is a building block.
Oh, for sure.
So if you think about religious studies, I don't know if any of you or your viewers have seen Ali Velshi on.
That's what I have.
Yeah, and he's on MSNBC. I think he's a news broadcaster.
Mm-hmm.
He has a degree in religious studies. That's his background. And that's how, if you can take a degree and parlay it into being one of the, premier broadcasters in the United States, it says you're learning and taking the right things away from your degree, which is that the fact that you're inquisitive and the fact that you want to learn and that you're interested in people and you're interested in things. So those are the things that I think education builds for us. And again, that's kind of what gets me up every day and gets me excited about learning more and learning with students. And I think that's the other thing that's fascinating for me as a perpetual student is students sometimes say, oh gosh, you've got to do a seminar on this course. I love when students do seminars because I learn so much. I learn about what the student is interested in, hopefully, because I never assign topics. But I also learn how people overcome their fears to speak in front of a class. I learn about what not just excites them, but what makes them afraid. And sometimes it's that fear that pushes you to that next level, right? So I love that part of my courses, and I've just recently introduced reflection papers again.
Okay, interesting.
And I think that some of even at the master's level, I introduce saying, because one of the things that I hope that students do is stop and take a moment and just think about, what have I learned? And not what am I going to copy down from the course, but why does it matter? And I think that that's one of the things that I've been blessed with, is the opportunity to reflect and to think, why has this journey been so great? And I hope that that's one of the things that come out. And I think it's why you and I have connected and so on, is for me, education has, I'm a first generation with post-secondary in my family.
That's awesome. I didn't know
myself
that.
and a couple of my other cousins we're that first generation that's done it. And our children are going on to getting degrees, which
Fantastic.
is exciting, right? So anyway, you probably have another question.
No. I like what we talked about, though, is I view education the same way. It is a building block, and especially with that transferable skills, there are certain things that you're going to be able to take away from anything. At its core, learning to learn is one of the most important things we can do in life. And it's one of those things I think there has been more of a push towards that with the education system. But like for a long time, it's always about that rote memorization, and you're not really applying it in any kind of usable, interesting way. And one thing I have noticed with being in St. Lawrence is that the teachers really do take pains to make sure that they're addressing how this information could be useful to us. So even something as dry as learning Excel. Our teacher, like when he was doing these online lectures, he was still talking about, oh, here's how I use this in my career. Oh, here's how you would use this. And by doing that and linking it to something that is actually a tangibly useful skill is perfect, because it really cements it as something that is important and you want to learn. And then just you take these things and you can move them to other aspects of your life. So I've started using Excel spreadsheets, and I've been making myself a budget, a nice little working budget. So it's not something they teach us, but by applying them from something we've learned into something else, it's just a nice way of going about things. But yeah, so you talked about how you started with your religious study bachelor's, and I know you have a couple of masters. What drew you into taking such a wide range of I guess, master's degrees?
Yeah, it's actually my latest cohort of classmates actually got a great kick out of the fact that my first master's was in theology.
Okay.
And again, as someone who doesn't have particular religious affiliation, it seems like an odd choice. But when you think of a theology degree, an academic theology degree, it really is the history of theology and religion and so on. And what really is fascinating in that is it's almost the history of development of relationships. I mean, if we look at some of the old of the canons, whether they're within the Judeo-Christian or the Quran, when we think about those types of things, we think about how they've guided and driven people as an alternative law. And so I looked at that, and that really kind of got me thinking about how we apply law. So when I went into theology, I specialized in restorative justice. So these little things that you don't realize that you have an opportunity, if you parlay them into opportunities, because there's no way that they would have ever said, we're looking for somebody with a master's in theology specializing in restorative, that would have never been. So part of it is you make your opportunities. And from there, because of that course, I also increased my knowledge of law and negotiation, labor relations, actually, because I was a manager at Queen's. Labor relations was a degree that was opening up, and I believe I told you the story. I actually ended up being second in my class, my graduating class for theology, and they gave me an award. But you needed to actually take another program if you were going to use the award. So I'm not wasting money. So before I even graduated from my Master's of Theology, I was applied for and was accepted into the Master's of Industrial Relations. Yeah. And that again, on my business side, really, really helped. And actually, it was what brought me to SLC as an instructor. And so again, something that I would have never anticipated with taking a Master's of Industrial Relations degree was becoming an instructor. But what an amazing, amazing experience. And it was funny because I was just like, I think, one term away from graduating with that degree when I got the offer at St. Lawrence through John Conrad, who is still with us in a different capacity, but he was my first associate dean and an incredible mentor. So that took a circuitous route because I was never going to work in unions or union negotiating, but all of those foundational courses, training and development, leadership, negotiation, all of that worked beautifully. And I ultimately landed with the University Ombudsman's Office. And while I was there, in 2015, finished my Master's of Industrial Relations degree and got really interested in this concept of negotiation and appeal processes and all of that. And happened to be bouncing around on the web one day, as I'm wont to do, and saw this program at Osgoode Hall Law School in a Master's of Laws in Dispute Resolution. And I thought, ooh, this seems right up my alley. And I thought, that's a pretty good school. And I've been very comfortable in my niche at Queen's. And I thought, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to throw my application in because fortunately I did okay. And in my programs and put it in, and lo and behold, the letter came. And it was like, well, I'm committed.
Gotta do it now.
And it was an amazing opportunity again to take a Master of Laws when you're not a lawyer. And just over 50% of our class were practicing lawyers. And one of the takeaways that I got in the very first course, which was an introduction to law in Canada,
Okay.
the lawyer who was teaching that, she said, for all of you, and it was a mandatory course for those of us who weren't lawyers, she said, what I want to tell you is you got here. She said, you have a place at the table. You pass this course, your voice in your class is as valuable as anyone else's. And I thought that was really great. And I've actually been able to, because of course we all had a bit of imposter syndrome, right? Taking a Master's of Law when you're not a lawyer. And it was the best advice possible. I took it to heart, and we have the closest cohort. Even our professors said they had never seen a cohort as tight as ours. And because we never really, for the most part, knew who lawyers were and who weren't. And so I think from that, one of the takeaways from that is, as myself as an instructor at SLC and as a program director and instructor at Queen's, I really took away, you earned your place at the table. So for all our students at SLC, regardless of your program, you earned the right to be here. Use your voice, take advantage of this opportunity. Because I thought that was, I learned that really late. Trying to tell people sooner, because that sometimes that does worry you, that concept of imposter syndrome. But I've been very, very fortunate, and yeah, it's led me all over the place.
That's fantastic. It's just one of those things in life where people do constantly have that imposter syndrome. They don't think they're good enough for an opportunity or for a job, and I think that's a good thing to take away, is that in a lot of these instances, we are good enough, we are capable, because we have gotten at least to the point of being able to think about this. And there really is no downside to at least trying to shoot your shot. And if you're not quite ready at that moment, if it doesn't work out, then maybe at least you'll be able to find out what you need to be able to get to the next point, or you'll be able to get close, and you can even decide it's not for you. And that's totally fine too. There are sometimes, like I've started a job or two previously where I started and I thought it was going to be just the best instance ever. And then after like 3-4 months, I'm like, you know what? I don't agree with the company culture. I don't agree with my boss. Like there's these little things, and knowing when to cut bait and to try to find a new opportunity is a really, really hard thing to do in life, but it's also very, very valuable. So as a mature student, I came to this a little bit later. What advice would you have for someone like me that's trying to go down a new path outside of the traditional route? What tips would you have and advice?
So I think one, seize the day. Enjoy the experience that you're having right now. And just remember that as much as you're learning from your instructors are learning from you as well.
Okay.
That you are contributing, and you do have a little bit extra to say, but remember to leave space for other people as well. I mean, sometimes that was one of the things that I was always very conscious of, is people are at different stages. I think one of the other things that I would suggest to students is take advantage of how amazingly international St. Lawrence is. Where possible, take opportunities to learn as well if you're a domestic student. Not just to learn, but also to teach it. People are curious. And if you have an open stance, be curious about each other as well, not just about your subject matter. I think that some of the things to remember as a mature student is you're going to have a bit more to put on your resume. True. Remember to draw from your schooling, like to think about the number of times that you've done presentations, the number of times you've your ability to use PowerPoint, your ability to use Excel, your ability to disseminate information, to tell others what excites you. and if you've had instructors that have been excellent mentors, try and establish a relationship with them, because they'll be a mentor for you even after you leave the school. And I think that's always having those professional links. So as much as possible, think of your professors not just as that person up there who's giving me a mark. And by the way, I'm going to put a little thing out there. So we don't give you marks.
True.
You earn them. That is, we're not giving you anything. We're following a rubric. You have earned those grades, regardless of what they are, good, bad, or in the middle. So that's one of the things that I want to remember is we're not giving you anything. Everything that you are taking from your school and your education that's all you. We're imparting and giving you an opportunity here. It's just take it and go with it. And if you do that while you're in school, I think that's another beautiful transferring skill that you're going to take into the workplace, is you're going to say, this is on me. I'm going to take this and I'm going to make this the best opportunity. And when you do that, you do exactly what you said. You'll determine whether this is going to be right or this is for right now. And how you want to grow with that company or not. But I do think as a mature student, also don't say it's too late.
Very true.
I just cannot stress enough how amazing it's been for me to learn. And trust me, it's not always been easy. I swear there were a lot of evenings I just opened my textbook and my kids needed me exactly at that moment. The whole time before, it was like I didn't exist, but the minute I opened up a textbook, it was like some radar.
I can imagine.
It's not always easy. And I think that sometimes that makes it even a little bit sweeter when we come back to school, is because, we balanced it out and we did it. And so it meant a lot to be able to achieve that, or to have the courage.
I think that's fantastic. And honestly, I can't think of a better way to kind of end our conversation here. Is there anything else you want to add for the student body out there?
No, just to say thank you. It is always a privilege to be in class with you guys. I have a great time. And I hope that within that, people are in some way, that my enthusiasm is contagious. And I hope that I wish everyone the best of luck. And thank you to the Student Association and you for inviting me to talk today about something that is obviously, I hope, comes across as a passion of mine. And I hope that it becomes a passion of others.
Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. You've definitely been a fun professor, and I can look forward to hopefully having you again in the future. So for that, we're going to wrap things up. Please follow us on all social media channels. Watch us on YouTube at The Voice Podcast, Instagram at SA Voice Podcast. Listen on SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. Have a nice day.